Hi, I'm Anthony, pastor of Calgary Life Church. Welcome to today's talk that we're going to be having. You know, as we've been talking the last little bit here about a very important issue, and it's that issue of racism. And I know it's all over social media, really touched off by what happened just recently, with Breonna Taylor, with Ahmaud Arbery, and then with George Floyd, and how the world seems to reacting in such a powerful way. And we want to talk about that today. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that the riot is the language of the unheard. And so I'm not here to talk about the riot or the looting, and I don't want to distract from the real issue, is that there is a social cancer that has marginalized, that has robbed the voice, the potential, the possibility, the justice, the equality of an entire segment of people. And I know it's not just our black friends. There's many people that would be First Nations that could relate to the same kind of systemic prejudice, or our Asian friends. And I don't want to exclude anybody, but I think it's important that we as the church speak out about this today, and that we are engaged. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. It's to be quiet. It's to be silent. It's to be inactive. It's to do nothing. And rather, I think as a church, we need to be informed. We need to be moved. We need to be gutted. We need to be upset. We have to embrace this to be part of the solution. And I really believe that's what Jesus wants us to be, part of the solution. The gospel needs to be evangelistically potent, and we need to be socially relevant. And we need to be his voice in this time. And so today you're going to enjoy my guest. I got with me today Lieutenant Gregory Amy. Now you're going to love his story because, well, he's from Houston. His family is family friends with George Floyd's family. They knew George Floyd very well. He's been in law enforcement. He's been in the military. And he's here in Calgary right now. And so, Gregory, welcome to our program today. It's so good to have you with us. And we've just been talking about, so tell us a little bit about your upbringing. You're from Houston.
Right. As I said, I'm from Houston, Texas there, and grew up in a pretty tough time, actually, in the midst of segregation, and dealt with a lot of racism just because of the color of my skin, right? And it was 9 of us, and our parents were very strict on us, and they always told us, no matter what, you have to be the best. You work hard, and you always have to prove yourself. No matter where you go in this life, and especially in this world, you're going to have to prove yourself no matter what you do.
So you had awesome parents.
Yeah.
Nine siblings.
9 siblings.
Oh, man. So you grew up in the time of segregation.
Yes.
So you were in an all-black school?
I was in an all-black school to start with, and I think in grade 5 they moved me to a white school.
Okay.
And there was only another black in the class with me, and the rest were whites.
Well, what? I mean, we've seen the footage and the films. What was that like?
Actually, it was pretty tough. It was like shocking because I'm used to being with other black students and then just go to an all-white school, and you notice that you were different in the way you were treated. I mean, it's like you're in the class and you were there. Like they dealt with other students. You raise your hand and eventually they come get to you. Probably by the end of the class, you go to your next class, right?
So you really felt ignored?
Yeah. And as we were talking earlier, when it came to sports, I think I took my anger out into sports, and I excelled in sports and stuff like that, right? So football, track, basketball. I mean, I made them pay.
So I mean that is fascinating. So you lived through all that whole upheaval, deep South. Mm-hmm. Now you told me then you entered the military.
Well, initially I saw so much wrongness in the police, and it's like, don't come across the tracks, stay in your area. Like if I came across the tracks riding my bike or something with friends, we were followed. I'll never forget there was a train derailment, and detectives were all over us, right? The questioners and trying to put words in our mouths. I'm like, how about our parents? Don't they get to come? I was a smart aleck too, so I'm surprised I'm alive, right? How about our parents? Don't they talk to you or what? And they kind of backed off, right? And never heard anything about it, but I did tell my parents about it. And then we'll keep an eye on you, right? Because we were like 5 miles from the school. We had to be bused to school and stuff like that, right? But every time we left our side, supposedly we were followed.
Your side, so you were expected to live in a certain part of the city. And if you stepped out...
Then they knew about it, right? So you were followed, or you'd have to have a reason why you're not on your side of the tracks, they say. Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. And like now, it's like nothing's really changed. I mean, we talk about racism. It's been happening since I was growing up, to be honest with you. And going into the military, I really felt it because whatever they say in the West, they teach other people in different foreign countries. My first tour in Germany and Korea is so funny. So they were told that black people at midnight grow tails. So I'm walking down the street and I'm like, why is everybody looking at my rear end? Then a guy, an older gentleman there, a black guy had been there a while, like, I need to tell you something. I'm like, and he told me, are you serious? I'm like, okay.
Like, you would think in this age that we live in that racism would have been shed, that we would have evolved beyond that. But, if you look at, for example, the world's most popular sport, soccer, FIFA, how many games are they shutting down and how many instances of just the most horrific, humiliating racism against the African players or the black players that exist in Italy and all over. It's, it is still so prevalent in our world today. Exactly. And it's almost like you can only oppress the human spirit so far. It reacts, like communism, and I think extreme religions, that just are oppressing, people. Eventually the human spirit just demands to be acknowledged, demands to be free. That's why God created us. And so you see this repercussion or this explosion, this reaction that we're seeing, because of what happened to George Floyd. Now, your family knew the Floyd family.
So you're going to get those reactions, as we said in the group before. It's never been dealt with. It's always swept under the rug because it's a black person, and as T.G. Jake said this morning, we're not seen as human. That's sad, but it's true. They don't see us as human, and they teach their kids. You have generation after generation learn the same thing. As I was telling you, my niece had her children out playing, and because they live in the affluent area, they came out and said, well, you don't play with them, come away, right? So you deal with that. This is 2020. You deal with that same nonsense, right?
When T.D. Jakes talked about the U.S. independence or the Constitution, didn't acknowledge the humanity of a black man.
No. Where's our freedom? I mean, I can go to war for you. I can police your areas to a degree, right? And I've also chastised a lot as a senior trooper. I would 7 cars on one black kid. Why? What did he do? Is he a murderer? Is he Superman? What's the deal? Why are you guys afraid of black people? They're just as good as you are, if not better, right? But it's amazing, and I'm concerned about my kids. Now I have relatives that are in law enforcement, right? And with things without people, they can care less whether you're in law enforcement or not. That right now, law enforcement is hated right now.
Yeah.
Right, because of the actions and other. Just standing around watching it happen instead of doing something, right?
Yeah.
No one has the intestinal fortitude to step in and say this is wrong, and it's being filmed, right? So.
Well, that is one of the issues is the police abuse. Now, you serve in the police, Calgary Police here in...
Not Calgary Police, but I was a Washington State trooper.
You were Washington State?
I work with the Calgary Police here. I'm in charge of all the security, all the buildings and stuff, and protect the policemen when they're off and stuff, right? So.
Okay.
I have 100 guys that work for me, and that's my main function. I report to the chief and his staff as well. So.
Okay. I mean, obviously, though, just like you have great bankers, you have horrible bankers, you have great journalists and bad journalists, you have great pastors and horrible pastors, and you have great policemen and corrupt policemen.
Right. And this action of this police officer makes it bad for all the decent police officers. There are a lot of decent police officers out there that really want to serve communities and protect them, but the actions of guys like this taints, and everybody taints everybody is the same, right? Yeah. And that concerns me, and it shouldn't be. Yeah. I had a friend, Justin Renfro, who played for the Stampeders at home in Philadelphia, and he's been assigned to Edmonton, which we don't like. So.
Yeah, of course. You're a good man.
But I was talking to him, texting, and he said it's the same thing. While he was there, because he drives the BMW, he's followed. This is 2020. Why is he followed? Then they stop him and say, well, the car is stolen. Really? You can run it. They knew his name before he got it. That means they ran his plate and everything, right? So this is the type of things that go on. But did you hear anything about that? No. You won't hear anything. And we always use the term, the black policeman, well, the guy was DWB.
What's that?
Driving while black.
DWB, driving while black.
Yep. And I have a good example. My oldest daughter will tell you, I ordered a Lexus and before I left Washington State, and we drove off the lot. I got a mile down the road, and the guy stops me. Well, comes up to the car, and he identifies himself. Okay, so why'd you stop me? Well, I'm not harassing you, sir. Well, it's a good thing you brought that up. What's the deal? So, well, I just need to check you out. I'm like, not going to happen. And I showed him my badge.
Wow. DWB.
Yeah. So call your supervisor.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's sad when you think, you know, for a white man like myself, just because I'm driving a new Lexus or a newer Lexus,
no one's going to stop.
No one's going to stop me.
Nope.
So, your dad, you have kids. Some of your kids are here in Canada. You have older kids, and they're in the States. Like when you were growing up, well, like did your parents talk to you about how do you relate to the police? Okay, like
absolutely. Yes, sir, no, ma'am. And that's the same thing still in my kids, right? Even my grandkids now that drive. So.
You see, I've never had to even think about having that conversation with my kids about if you ever stop, this is the way you speak to a police officer, you know, but it's just not the same set of rules.
If you don't, you get a reaction you don't want to see. That's why I always explain to my kids and grandkids, like, it's yes, sir, no, sir. And if it's night, you turn every light on, let your windows down, so they don't feel threatened. Because you're black, you're going to be threatened.
So you touch kids, turn the lights on, windows down, so they can see everything.
Absolutely.
So they can see there's no weapons.
And hands on the steering wheel. Whatever you do, you articulate what you're doing.
You know, I read, I don't know if it was T.D. Jakes or John Gray who had said that, you know, if there's a mass murder, you know, if he's black, it's criminal, lock him up. But if he's white, and all of a sudden we start about mental health issues. Yeah. And so this disparity, do you see this systemic racism in the police force?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. There are some good agencies, like Calgary Police Service is a good agency. I can give them kudos, right? But as I said, Washington State has a lot of issues. There, a lot of times they shoot before they ask questions. Right? And if you don't do what they said, they'll come up with an excuse, to be honest with you. I've seen it happen. Yeah. So one of the reasons I walked away, I just had enough. I couldn't deal with it. I love serving the people, protecting the people, but I was followed half the time as a police officer, right? Me and my friends would be together and, you know, pulled over and, oh, sorry. I'm like, yeah. Right? So,
yeah, it's that whole just profiling, just based on your color of your skin.
So, and we always use the term, we're too black to be blue and too blue to be black. So we get it both ways because the black community don't trust police officers, so where are we? You know, we caught in the middle, right?
Too black to be blue and too blue to be black. Yeah. That is a difficult situation to be in. You know, you mentioned that. So you served in the military, right. 22 years.
22 years.
You served your country. You know, you've been an upstanding citizen. Did you ever feel like you were provided the same opportunities as your white counterpart?
Nope. Because when I joined the State Patrol, and I tell you, it is disheartening. I can't call the officer's name that told me that when they hired me, it took 6 months. Well, they would have hired me 6 months earlier, but there was a captain, white captain, who was in charge of HR at the time, said, there's no nigger that clean, you go find something on him. And they told me, like, watch yourself because he's going to internal investigations now. So.
Wow.
And that was 4 years on the force when they said that. I'm like,
4 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've already proved yourself. You've excelled. What about here in Canada? What have you experienced here in Canada?
I think they're a little smarter here in Canada on how they do things. When it comes to racism, I see the rebel flag, which is really brutal for the states. If they see that in the wrong area, you're going to have some repercussions, right? Yeah. And I understand, but it's just out of ignorance.
Yeah.
A lot of people are ignorant, both sides, but it's, like you said, love. It's not about love, it's indifference. My problem is when you have people who, I call them inbred because they never go anywhere, They sit in the same
Yeah.
city from elementary on up if they graduate, and they have this strong opinion about who you are, and they don't know you. I had a kid come up to me in 2018 when I came back from the Philippines. I was visiting, and he actually licked me and turned around to his mom and said, "Mom, he doesn't taste like chocolate." It's a good thing I have a sense of humor. I just looked, and she just turned bright red. I'm like, whatever.
That honestly happened.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
You know?
Like you would, again, it comes back to this whole thing about ignorance and about what you've been exposed to and what you've been taught, you know. And so I think this is a real learning moment. I think we can, as a society, we can really be pivotal in helping to be the catalyst. Like, I'm so proud of our younger generation. Like, my kids have been down at the Calgary protests, and you know, they've been up and they're vocal, and they're gutted by this. They're moved by it. They're everything inside them is just in revulsion about how can this happen in our society, and which I take that as a good sign.
Right.
But I think, you know, and at the same time, I think, okay, now, as a faith community leader, I don't just pastor Calgary Life Church. I believe my responsibility is to pastor our city, to be a part of that.
Exactly.
What do you recommend for us as churches? Like, you know, how do we navigate this? How can we be part of this? You know, speaking to people that feel so marginalized and profiled and dehumanized. How can we be part of the answer?
I think is what you're doing now. You welcome all cultures in. And it's like we said when we were on the phone yesterday, it's not about sensitivity training. That's what the government like, oh, let's give them sensitivity training. Well, all the guys I knew that went to sensitivity training, they just got smart on how they did their stuff, right? And I told them, until a man's heart change, you're not going to see a change. And nothing's has changed because the hearts hadn't changed. What's in the mind and heart comes out.
Yeah.
Right?
So how do we change the heart?
They need Christ.
Yeah.
I'm serious. They don't want to hear it, but it's true. They need Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, you can have all these laws, and you can legislate, and you can have religion that can try to enforce these rules, but until there's that inward miracle.
I'm like this. People don't care about what you know until they know you care. The government knows there's a problem, but they're not showing that they care because nothing's changed. We had several presidents and it's the same. Everything's swept under the rug.
Yeah.
No one's doing anything. They marched, and like I say, people, there's a breaking point, you know? And that point's broken right now.
Yeah.
What are they going to do to fix it? More laws on the books. You got laws on the books that you can change things. You're not enforcing the laws you have.
Yeah.
You know? Why create more laws for what?
Yeah.
That's just piecemeal and everything.
And I think that is like something what we're doing right now is just having these conversations, because I think out of sight, out of mind. You know, if it's not in my world, it doesn't concern me. Right. And I think that as a Christ follower, when Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan, I mean, that's a real racial story right there, because the Samaritans were considered half-breeds, right? They were as low as you could go. And the hero of the story now, you know, it's interesting how the priest and the Levite, they turned and they looked away, and then here comes this half-breed, the person of the wrong race, and he comes in and he reveals the love of Christ. And I think that's such a powerful story, because Jesus was addressing, you know, that racial inequality even in his own world. And I think that's something that as a church we have to be actively involved in.
Absolutely.
And I think doing something like this just to hear the story. You know, because when I sit and I listen, I hear these stories, and I'm like, how could this be? I thought we were. It just shows you that education is not enough.
Nope.
You know, the whole encyclopedia movement was, well, we have all these human ills, and the issue is ignorance. So if we just educate everybody, then the world will be better. And so that's why we have encyclopedias. Exactly. It was part of, and that philosophy thought that if we just have knowledge and education, that'll change the world. But what we're realizing is that it doesn't change the heart.
Exactly.
And the only thing that changes the heart is that message of Christ's salvation, the love and the unconditional love of God that comes through Jesus.
That's the only thing that's going to make a change, and it's up to the church, not the government, to do that.
It's the church's responsibility.
Because judgment starts at the house of God, and there are a lot of churches that still have racism in it, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
So, and communities are built what? They build churches. Everybody that comes from the community comes here, right? So if you got schisms in there, guess what? You're going to have problems.
You know, and I think people have asked me, well, are you going to start a Spanish church? Are you going to start this ethnic group church? And I've always just said no, and I'm not against that.
Right.
I mean, I think they serve their purpose. But for me, when I read the book of Revelation, I see people from every kindred, every tribe, every tongue, and part of the, for me is that I feel that. Like, I want to know if I see somebody who's got an accent, or I want, where are you from, man? Like, and I'm trying to learn that. Sometimes that can be just rude. But I'm not. It's not coming from a place of I think you're weird or different. It's like, I want to know you. I want, maybe I've been in your country, and there's things I love about your country. But I think so I'm at a place here where I'm like, okay, I want to validate. I want to hear what people have gone through, and I want to make sure that I carry myself in a way that is not going to make you feel like an outsider.
Yeah, exactly, and that's important, because when I first came here with Pastor Denny, I went where my calling, believe, is to bring people to the house of prayer.
Yeah,
right? And I went out and got a biker gang and brought them in. Everybody was like, "What in the world?" They asked me, "How should we come?"
Yeah.
Just wear what you normally do. They came in all this stuff, right, on their bikes.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Oh, yeah. And that's what I believe. Like you said, it's not, I don't agree with black church, white church. That's not Christ. Christ said we're all one.
Yeah.
And you'll know that we're Christians by our love for one another. That's Christ. And Christian means Christ-like. But if you really look at it, is it really Christ-like in this world today?
When you think about how many times the church has missed its opportunity, like when Mahatma Gandhi was studying in, I believe it was South Africa, or it might have been East Africa, and he was very interested in Christianity and, of course, the God of the Christians. So he went to worship one Sunday morning to learn about this Jesus, and when he walked in, it was an all-white church, and they basically threw him out, called him a horrible name, and said, "You go worship with your own people." And at that point, he says, "You know what? I'll take the good out of Christianity," but that was it. But what if Mahatma Gandhi would have, embraced Jesus at that moment, the influence he could have had in India for the Christian faith. Now, thankfully, I mean, look what he's done, though, through, that whole pacifist movement. Amazing what he did for India. And I mean, he's a true hero, as an icon. Dr. Martin Luther King also took that pacifist approach and believed that hatred can never drive out hatred. It takes love to do that. And but I look at that opportunity of of how prejudice was so prevalent in the church. That should be the place where acceptance, love, affirmation, diversity, but instead, the word has been twisted. I never forget as a kid watching, I think it was the Phil Donahue show or one of these things, and he had a couple of Klansmen on there. And Phil Donahue said, "How can you say that Jews are not human, or they're not, And he says, "Well, it's right in the Bible." And they took where Jesus had said to the religious leaders, "You're of your father the devil. You're such liars. You're of your father the devil," is what Jesus said. Called out these religious leaders, and he said, "There you go. Jesus himself said that Jews are as of the devil." And it's like, if you don't understand the context, and you realize that man, God is the creator of all people. Of one blood, He made every race and every nation. Really, there's only one race. Right. That's the human race. But I think about how the church has either missed its opportunity, or has cloaked their religious hatred through scriptures. Right. To persecute and to manipulate the people that they want to
Right. And they've used the scriptures ignorantly. There's no foundation on what they're saying whatsoever. I've also been asked to leave churches, all white churches. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I know what it's like. Oh, you're in the wrong place. I'm like, I don't think so. If I'm in the wrong place, the Spirit's not here, so I guess I'll go with it. Yeah.
Like, I mean, when you think of, like we, in our last session, we talked about 1 John 2:9, where it talks about, if you hate, if you say you're in the light, but you hate your brother and your sister, you're not in the light, you're in darkness, man.
Exactly.
Because if you're walking in God, you're walking in love. If you're walking in love, you're walking in the light. There's no occasion to stumble in you.
But you see, there are a lot of churches, not to cut you off, in the church states that they preach that nonsense. That is the white race, right? No other race. So, like, okay, if you think so.
Wow. Yeah, and I think this is where it's a great wake-up call, a great opportunity for the church to actually change that, because those are the guys that are going to get the media attention, and I think that it's sad, but they're the ones that, the media is going to report on. Look at these Christians when they don't report on, on churches like ours or others that are loving and serving their community and embracing and empowering and non-judgmental. At the end of the last program, I talked about how someone said, well, love is colorblind and love is gender blind and all these blind. It's not true. Love sees clearly. Exactly. And love sees the difference and yet can still accept and empower and validate and celebrate, our diversity.
And I'll agree with him, because love, if it's blind, it can't see. So how is it any good? If it's all this blindness, what are you actually seeing? Blind, then you can't see.
Yeah.
So you're hiding to the fact that there is a problem.
Yeah. So when we talked about, it really takes the miracle of the new birth. How did you come to faith?
I grew up in Southern Baptist, and I thought it was legalistic. I mean, you can't, all the can't-nots. I'm like, man, what's the point? Yeah. But I got away in the military, and I began to see different churches and visit different churches and different denominations. And I think I had a real close call in Korea where I got ambushed and lost 7 guys. And it's just weighed on me so. And I went to church, and I just asked God to come in my life. I know I've been out there as a young person, just hellish. It was bad. I mean, I lived on the edge of life, airborne, jumping out of perfectly good airplanes, and thought I was invincible. In the military to get that hua, like nothing can hurt you, you're bad. Right? I was in great shape, but I tell you, that rocked me to lose those people as their leader. And after then, I was on point with Christ.
Wow. How many years ago was that?
That was back in 1984.
1984, okay. Yeah. I gave my life
Never
to Christ.
Forget that.
82, yeah. And that's what the Bible says. If anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation, a new species of people that's, never existed before, really. It's that quality, that God kind of life on the inside. When we think about the message of the gospel, that out of the, it deals with, in Christ is neither male nor female. It deals with the gender gap. There's neither Jew nor Greek. It's about bringing the races together, and it's not about slave or free. And that's today. There are more slaves today than there's ever been. And I think these are 3 really important issues that are prophetic for our time. What is the message of the moment? We need to have gender equality. When you have segments of the church that don't believe that women can lead or women can speak in the church or teach a man, or it's like what, it's archaic and it's misunderstanding of the scriptures. Because on the day of Pentecost, I'll pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. If the field is leveled, and then the second thing is, about the race equality. It's neither Jew nor Greek.
Exactly.
You know why? It's about
all
being a new
same.
creation. Exactly.
We're all new creation. So where do you get color from?
Yeah.
Christ never looked at color.
No. And then, and Paul said, I don't know anybody after the flesh.
Exactly.
I'm not going to look at you by your track record. I'm not going to look at you by the color of your skin or by the car that you drive. Right. I want to know you according to that new creation reality of Christ on the inside of you. Right. And that's the way we need to be able to see things. But it's interesting how Jesus had said to the religious leaders of his world, you've made the word of God of no effect by your man-made traditions. Right. And what are traditions that he's referring to is our understanding of who God is that comes from maybe our culture or our upbringing, but doesn't come from that place of revelation of what the scriptures teach. Exactly. And what you have here in North America is you have a whole segment of the church that's been raised in the traditions of men, that the black man doesn't matter, that he's not your equal, he's not your brother, or whatever that is, and that's what's robbing the Word of God from having an impact in their lives. And so I think us as believers, it's so important for us to say, Jesus, you know what, search my heart, help me, help me to learn, help me to, to love deeper and better and broader and be aware of this.
Exactly. And that's what I have to do. I mean, I grew up, like I said, a lot of times I had hate toward white people, but I didn't display it, right? because I knew it was a struggle inside. I knew things wasn't right the way they treated black people, and I saw it a lot every state I went to, and even sometimes overseas in Germany and places like that. But there was something always restraining me not to act out.
Yeah.
Right? I had a choice at the time in Houston before I left to join the Black Panthers, which were really tough people, right? And my mom said, "You do, and they don't have to worry about them killing me. I'll take care of that." So I'm like, okay,
like that.
yeah.
So so you grow up in this society where you're treated like that. All these stories you've told us. How do you keep your heart from getting into hatred
And
or
that's
bitterness?
the thing. I was real bitter. That was just, miserable, right? Because I loved my family and loved everybody around. There were Mexicans around and other people that I guess the people on that side of the trash would call white trash that lived in the area. And we all took care of one another. And that's what made it difficult for me, right? And then my kids are mixed, so it really, and I learned a lot by traveling. Be honest with you, reading and traveling and being in the Word, that everybody's the same no matter what. And there's a lot of things sometimes I see, like now, I don't want to watch the film because I'll get angry, and I don't want to get angry, right? Yeah. I want to treat everybody the same, and I treat everybody the way I want to be treated. And that attitude has saved my life.
Yeah.
Because I stopped a man one morning, I hated working days as a trooper. And he was speeding, so I went up to the car. I'm like, "Man, I thought you were a cop. You were flying, and laughing and talking. I'm looking, trying to see you don't have any weapons." I'm like, "So I'm going to give you a ticket, but I'll take some off for you." Had him laughing and talking. He took off. And 5 hours later into my shift, I got called back into the headquarters. I'm like, "Did you stop this guy this morning?" I'm like, "Yeah, come on, he can't be complaining. We're laughing and talking." "Oh, no, he shot somebody." I'm like, "What?"
One of the other, the other thing, I watched a clip of a fella, just an officer, and talking to this woman, and all of a sudden she pulls out a big knife and comes at him. Like, the other thing that we don't talk about is, like, okay, as an officer of the law, you got people that have had given opportunity. Well, we just heard about this officer in Las Vegas that at the riot, someone shot, he's in ICU at this moment. And, like when you know that there are people that don't see you as a person either, as a law enforcement agent, and they see you as an opportunity to vent their wrath, like, how, that must affect you. Like, when you're pulling someone over, you're thinking about this person might want to kill me.
Well, it does, yeah. In Washington State, it's close to Idaho, where the Klan and Hayden Lake and those places, right? But and I've dealt with a lot of constitutionalists, Aryan Nation, but I am firm but fair. If they're traveling correctly, after I stop them with the infraction, I send them on. And they chip. I get the N-word all and over them, like, it doesn't faze me. It got to the point where I say, "You got to come up with another way to insult me, because it's not working." Just look at me.
Well, I think we need to really, we have to pray for our law enforcement, our first responders.
Absolutely.
Because they're risking their lives, and
daily.
and daily, and so we never ever want to justify or excuse any kind of a police brutality, or police race, wherever it's found, any kind of brutality or abuse. We don't. But at the same time, there are good cops out there.
There are a lot of good.
A lot of good cops, and we want to make sure that we pray and support them.
Exactly.
How's your now? George Floyd was younger than you,
right.
But your family, and you had gone into the military, and so, but your family knew the family well, and how are they coping with all this?
They're coping. It's difficult, as you know, and my mom's 96, so we converse weekly and stuff. And actually, our family we've started having, since COVID, starting to have family prayer calls on Friday, conference call prayers and stuff. So, and the whole family gets on the conference call.
Nice.
So we do that. And I also have a prayer conference call that I started 10 years ago when I was here. I just could, before I found CLC and Kingdom Ambassador. So, and it's throughout U.S., Canada, Philippines as well. Right?
Nice.
So
nice.
Every Monday. So we fast all day and pray for the things of this world, especially now, right?
Yeah.
And we come together and pray at the end of the day.
Yeah. The Floyd family, so they were believers?
Yeah, definitely. So it's hard to grew up in Texas and not be a believer unless you're just way out there. Right?
I heard Bob Hope say there are more Baptists in America than Americans, So, but this has been great, and Gregory, thank you for coming and sharing your story with us. And giving us insight into, so many different angles. And so, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching today, and I hope you walk away from this with just a greater appreciation of how prevalent, how damaging racism is, how difficult it is to be in law enforcement, and that we just become a little bit more sensitive and open. And you might be watching today and thinking, man, my heart's full of hatred and prejudice, and I want you to know that there's someone who's a specialist in taking hearts of stone and turning the hearts of flesh. And maybe you've been victimized by racism, and you feel that you don't belong, and you feel that you've been ostracized. I know someone who will never leave you nor forsake you, and whoever comes to God through Him, He'll never turn away. He'll never, chase away, and that's Jesus. If you're looking for affirmation, you're looking for love, you're looking for acceptance, you're going to find that, you're not going to find it in any kind of legal code or any kind of religious endeavors or experiences other than receiving Jesus Christ, because He loves you. And the Bible gives us a promise. It says, for as many as received Him, to those He gives the power to become a child of God. You get adopted into God's family, and God puts His Spirit on the inside of you that cries out, Abba, Papa, Father. Isn't that amazing? That you get a spirit from God on the inside that reminds you that you're His, that God's not your judge, that He's not a distant dad, that He's present, and deep on the inside, it's Abba, Daddy. That's the relationship you can have. You can know today that your sins are forgiven, that your past is past, and that God can redeem anything that you've gone through, and you can have a fresh start today by receiving Jesus. Now, it's coming up on the screen right now, how you can contact, one of our prayer partners. Would love to pray with you and introduce you into a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Thank you for watching. Information's on the screen. Gregory, thanks again for sharing your story. Pleasure to get to know you. All right. God bless you, and thanks for watching.